first conversation tonight is an important one, not about whether Alberta should separate, but whether organized growing against the opposition to the separation aspect of it, and who's heading it up and what it is all about. And joining us tonight is the spokesperson, leader, I guess, of would be the best way, Thomas, to describe it, of the Forever Canadian movement, and we'll get into why you chose that particular name in a moment. Thomas Lukasik, and he is out in Edmonton. And Thomas, let's jump right into it, right off the bat. First of all, why did you choose the name Forever Canadian?
Well, Gary and Eddie, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that and reaching out to your audience. Forever Canadian, it's quintessential to who I am and who most of Albertans are. We cheer for different sports teams. We come from different ethnocultural backgrounds. But one thing that really unites us is the fact that we are Canadians and we're forever Canadians. This is part of our identity.
You've also served inside government, and you've seen constitutional fights up close, Thomas. What worries you most right now about where this conversation is heading in Alberta?
Well, correct. I've been in Alberta government for a number of years, cabinet minister and deputy premier. This is a dangerous conversation. In all parts of Canada, as you travel the country, as all of us have, we are very different in different regions from an economic perspective. British Columbia has its industries, Alberta has its industries, and so does Quebec. But what really makes us a united country is that we're putting all of these resources together and forming one strong economic unit. And even though we're even culturally different as Quebecers and Albertans, but we have that pride in being Canadian, because when you look at Canada from outside in, either from a political or economic perspective, you see one country. Those differences, which are really positive, are not visible from the outside, and we need to be united and be supporting each other across the entire country. Particularly at a time when we live in a geopolitical world that is so fragile. We are realigning our allegiances, both military and economic, across the world. There are players in the world that would like to see democracies crumble and Western countries not collaborate as well as they do. And at this point in time, at this very fragile point in time, last thing we can afford is internal disputes. Yeah, we have differences. We always have, and there are mechanisms to resolve them, but separation is simply not one of those mechanisms.
Right, understood. And just from my mind, before I get into the next question, I'm sure it's probably a question on our viewers' mind. How long have you been with this organization, and how long has Forever this movement of yours? How long has it been together?
Well, it started actually quite spontaneously because it became apparent that the separatists were going to file for a referendum using their question, and they wanted to organize. So I had to beat them to the punch, and I filed my pro-Canadian question with Elections Alberta. And according to Alberta's legislation called the Citizens Initiative Act, I had 90 days to collect 300,000 signatures. So I mobilized this entity called Forever Canadian, and in 90 days we collected nearly 500,000 signatures of proud Canadians wanting to stay in Canada. And now this Forever Canadian, it was a petition initiative, is transformed into a campaign because it looks like we will have a referendum in this province in 2026, and we will be the pro-Canadian campaign moving forward.
Right. Very interesting. And in terms of any pressures from your constituents, is this something that comes up in conversations often in your organization?
Well, I don't have constituents per se. I'm no longer elected for quite a while. But this is really the topic du jour. in Alberta, you cannot go grocery shop or go to a gas station without somebody talking about separation, because it is an existential issue in this province. By far, most Canadians cannot even imagine not being Canadian.
Yeah.
We have families and friends in Quebec and Ontario and British Columbia. We're proud Canadians. Olympics are coming up. We all will be cheering for Team Canada in our
Of course.
favorite sports. And to consider not being Canadian is something that most Albertans find difficult to imagine. More so also because of the fact that a large contingent of separatists not only want to separate, but they want to become the 51st state. They want to join the United States. And looking at the United States today and at the politics and social turmoil in the United States, last thing most Albertans want is to be part of that.
Right, right. Gary?
Thanks, Eddie. What is your feeling about some of the members of the Alberta Prosperity Project meeting in the U.S. with some officials talking about a $500 billion line of credit? How is that having any kind of an impact at all? Do you feel, or are people beginning to feel like it's either becoming a reality or could very easily become a reality, or do they feel like maybe they're selling out?
That's a very good question, and the answer to it is rather complex. Unfortunately, there are people in the separatist camp who look up to these leaders, like Mr. Jeff Rath, who flew to Washington, and others, and they feel some sense of comfort knowing that Washington and President Trump is supporting them. Those are the ones who, frankly, would like to become the 51st state. However, vast majority of Albertans are appalled about this, because these individuals are not elected. They have no right to negotiate Alberta's and Canada's natural resources in exchange for a loan, which it's a loan that would be payable by all of Albertans, and these unelected individuals are negotiating a loan which Albertans would have to pay off without any mandate to do so. So the word treason comes up a lot, and even though I'm not sure if that really meets the Criminal Code of Canada definition of treason, but this behavior is definitely unacceptable. So those of us who would not consider separation are even more determined to put an end to this, because that behavior is simply unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to play a clip for you from Pierre Poilievre's speech the other night to the Conservative gathering in Calgary, where he appears to address the unity question, but does he? And I'd like to get your reaction to that when we're finished.
And we need to unite this country like never before, because a house divided cannot stand. Here we go again. Liberals are in power, and just as night follows day, separatist movements are in resurgence back in Quebec and here in Alberta. These movements, which had been dormant or even dead when Prime Minister Harper left office. Now, we can simply attack people who feel this way, or we can ask them why. Why in Alberta and Quebec? Why, particularly among young people in those provinces, have so many lost hope in Confederation? Well, here's a few hints. For the last 10 years, Ottawa has told our young people that our history is filled with shame and horror, that we are a post-national country with no core identity, and that our youth will never own homes. But other than that, they should feel great about being united in Canada. All the while, the federal government stomps on Alberta's energy sector and Quebec's jurisdiction. Now, our message to those youth and to all of the people in Alberta and Quebec who are losing hope in our country: you will again have a country that respects your autonomy, is proud of your industries, unites us around our common identity and history, a country that will afford you the hopeful future that you have earned.
Did he go far enough in addressing the issue, especially right in Alberta at the time?
Well, let me share a few thoughts following that, hearing that speech again. First of all, it's historically inaccurate, that there were no separatist movements prior, during conservative governments. As a matter of fact, your Quebec a referendum followed on the heels of failed Michlik Accord, which was during Prime Minister Maruni's tenure. So no one has monopoly, no political party has monopoly on unity in this country. These separatist movements have been occurring for over 100 years. We had them in Nova Scotia, we had them in Alberta before, irrelevant of who was in Ottawa. Second of all, the last pipeline that was built was actually purchased by federal government during Prime Minister Trudeau's tenure, and now Prime Minister Carney signed a memorandum of understanding on possibly building another pipeline. So there are a lot of factual inaccuracies and weaponizing separatism, which really is existential. It's threatening our national future. For political gain, for partisan political gain, is very irresponsible. And I'm calling out to all politicians across the country, doesn't matter what political party, that we need to set aside our partisanship when we're dealing with national unity in the face of international threat. However, having said that, I would agree that there is room for improvement. The Forever Canadian campaign is not a status quo campaign. We ourselves acknowledge the fact that there are Albertans who are not happy with status quo, and we need to take those concerns very seriously. When I travel the province and I meet with Albertans, I meet with some separatists, and I think it's important that we hear them out. There is a segment of Canadians, not only Albertans, that simply feel disenfranchised, both economically or politically. A lot of this started during COVID. Many of us with either white collar jobs or portable jobs or with transferable skills managed to work from home during COVID and not have to rely on government grants. We haven't lost houses or mortgages. Well, if you work on oil rigs, you didn't have that opportunity. So, and there are many sort of economic examples of that. So yes, there is frustration. That frustration is real. I think there are solutions to some of those sources of frustration, but it is not a partisan political issue that, when Harper was in government, life was great, and when Trudeau or Carney is in government, life isn't. I can tell you, I was a deputy premier and a cabinet minister in Alberta government, progressive conservative government, during both liberal and conservative federal administrations. And we were just as frustrated with one government as another, because the issues that we have in the country are structural. They're not partisan. They have nothing to do with liberalism or conservatism. They are just structural issues. Albertans are upset about the number of seats that we have in the House of Commons and the number of seats in the Senate being too few. Prime Minister Harper ran on a platform of a triple E Senate, which he didn't accomplish. So this is not pointing fingers at any political party. There are structural issues. The equalization formula may be another one that we need to explain, because there is still a lot of misunderstanding about those issues, and then work hard to resolve them. But separation is not an answer to the problem. As a matter of fact, if Alberta was to separate, Albertans wouldn't know what a problem is until then, because having a landlocked province that's prey to a potential incursion by Americans for our natural resources would cause us more problems than we have right now.
We do have a couple of comments coming in, and what I'd like to do is bring those up. Just bear with me for a second while I adjust the screen. And let's see, there we go. Deborah says, I agree with Thomas. When you are under attack, it's time to set any differences aside and stand united. Canadians, we were infiltrated in the 70s by Republicans, and they've been sowing discord. And then she came back with one more comment to follow up, and that is, not owning a home is no reason to destroy your country. I
would agree, and as a matter of fact, economists of all the political backgrounds and ideological backgrounds all agree on the fact that Alberta, as a standalone country, would jeopardize itself economically. Those who are leading the separatist movements are giving very simplistic answers to very complex questions. You know, there's this assumption, and I imagine some separatists in Quebec feel the same way, that the day after separation, you still will have all the privileges of being Canadian, except you will have the bonus that you will have your own self-determination and be your own separate country. Well, that's not how separation works. This is a divorce. After separation, we will negotiate what benefits you get to keep of being Canadian. In our case, in Alberta, access to the Port of Vancouver, Trans-Canada Highway, railways, embassies, currency, passports, foreign relations, military support, policing, and the list goes on and on. Farmers with inspection agencies for agricultural products. Marketing of Canadian products, which is done by federal government, and the list is a million things. There's this assumption that we will get to retain all that and just not share equalization with the rest of the country. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And I imagine the federal government will have to play hardball with a separate Alberta because it has to send a clear message to the rest of Canada. This was done by European Union to United Kingdom. When United Kingdom voted during Brexit to separate from continental European Union went out of its way to make it difficult on UK to send a message to other member states. So there's this dream of utopia that you get the benefit of both, but that's not how divorces work.
So, from your perspective, what should federal leaders be doing differently when they're hearing this kind of frustration being expressed in Alberta? You're starting to hear a little bit from Saskatchewan and, of course, in Quebec. And really, Quebec is more cultural, whereas it seems Alberta in particular is more centered on the economic side of things.
That is correct. Yes, there are no cultural reasons for Alberta to separate, unlike Quebec. Whereas I fully appreciate the sentiments of separatism in Quebec, I still believe that Quebec being embraced by the rest of Canada and us supporting French language, French culture. Both of my daughters in Alberta finished all of their education exclusively in French. Why? Because it's so important. Part of Canada is speaking French. What makes us now be able to develop better relations with the European Union is the fact that we are bilingual and that we have this French culture interwoven even in Alberta. By the way, on February 11, our Francophone community will be announcing that they are joining Forever Canadian. And that's a strength. That's what makes us stronger. And we have to support each other. But to answer your question more precisely, it is time for political leaders to put their own political aspirations and partisanship aside for the benefit of the country. I don't want to hear another speech like this from Mr. Poilievre or from Danielle Smith in Alberta or others. This is a time when we are actually threatened externally, and we need to get our house in order. And to do so, we need to learn to listen to each other, and we have to set aside our political ambitions. And that is the only way we're going to bring unity. And I can tell you, during the last Quebec referendum, I got engaged personally as well, and many Albertans did, because I cannot imagine Canada without Quebec, and I'm hoping that the rest of Canada cannot imagine Canada without Alberta. We are one country from coast to coast to coast, like siblings. Sometimes we fight and we walk away mad from the dining room table, but you know what? We still go to bed under the same roof, and that's how it has to happen.
You garnered over 400,000 verified signatures. The other side now is working to get their signatures and meet the qualifications, which is 172,000?
177,000.
177,000. And it seems that they're picking up steam. There have been lots of video of long lines where people waiting to get in to sign the petitions. Do you feel that there is a surge of support now starting to come forward for the other side?
You know, it's hard to interpret the visuals. They're using a very different strategy for collecting signatures. I had over 6,000 canvassers, registered canvassers with Elections Alberta, who were omnipresent throughout the province every day and every evening. So wherever you turned in Alberta, there was a table set up somewhere, somebody collecting signatures. Probably because of the fact that it's winter, the separatist movement, they're renting community halls, and you have one chance to sign this petition in one city, so they get those lineups. I'm not sure how they translate into numbers, but let's put it this way. In 90 days, in 3 months, I collected actually nearly 500,000 signatures. The signatures that were not accepted were not because they weren't valid, but there is a technicality. In rural Alberta, farmers have a P.O. box for address, and that is inappropriate, so those signatures were disqualified. So I garnered nearly 500,000 in 90 days. The premier changed the rules to help the separatists. They have to garner only 177,000 signatures in 120 days. So I imagine they will reach their number. So that is why Forever Canadian is fully prepared for a full-on referendum campaign battle.
All right, your website, I have a graphic of it coming up, I think. Yeah. So your website, you're appealing to all Canadians to join the movement and help fund your movement. Are you getting much feedback from the rest of the country and support from the rest of the country?
Yes, let me start by saying thank you to all of Canada. Yes, Canadians are donating, and what's really heartwarming is that we're getting a lot of small donations, and actually that's what you want in a campaign like this. So you know, Canadians are expressing their love for Alberta and for all of Canada. Much like I said, they just simply can't imagine Canada without Alberta. So yes, Canadians are responding, and I'm encouraging all of you to make a donation if you can, because these campaigns are hellishly expensive. So we need that support from all of Canada. This is not an Alberta issue. This is a Canada issue, and we have to be all in it together, just like we will be helping out in Quebec. For certain, as a matter of fact, help yourself to our branding. I think it will work in Quebec as well. But we are asking Albertans to sign our registration form on our website on forever-canadian.ca, so that we can make sure that on referendum day we will get them out to vote and assist them with voting. So I'm asking all Canadians to log on to forever-canadian.ca. If you're outside of Alberta, please make a donation. If you're in Alberta, obviously make a donation, but most importantly, register yourself as a potential voter.